While Sergio Perez tried to close in on Charles Leclerc as they battled for P2 in the latter stages of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the Mexican ultimately missed out. Surprisingly, Max Verstappen didn't help Perez. Was it a fair move? Stay tuned to find out. Red Bull has never gotten a 1-2 finish in the Drivers' World Championships. Therefore, the team would have been thrilled if they could have gotten Sergio Perez to finish ahead of Charles Leclerc on the points table. But when push came to shove in Abu Dhabi, they didn't want it enough to put Max Verstappen's 15th win of the season in jeopardy. Max Verstappen is not persuaded that it would have been a valid request for his Red Bull team to ask him to block Charles Leclerc so that his teammate, Sergio Perez, could catch up with the Ferrari driver in the closing stages of the 2022 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. In order for Perez to finish second in the championship behind Verstappen, he needed to finish ahead of Leclerc, who was competing for Ferrari and had fresher tyres than Perez was using in the final laps of the race. Last year, Perez has mounted a very spirited and very targeted defense against Verstappen's F1 title rival, Lewis Hamilton, in the Abu Dhabi decider, backing him up to the tune of nearly 8 seconds over 2 laps. But while it appeared that Perez's team radio channel was discussing the possibility of Verstappen doing something similar to Leclerc, Red Bull shot the idea down by suggesting that any such approach would simply grant Leclerc DRS and make it easy for him to defend himself against Perez. When asked if there had been an instruction to back up Leclerc, Verstappen responded, "No, there was not, but also, that is quite a tricky call to make. You also don't want to end up, of course, you can possibly block, but is that fair racing? It's, I think, not the nicest way of going out of the season, you know." At the finish line, Perez was 1.3 seconds behind Leclerc. Perez had fresher tyres than Leclerc and at one point seemed poised to catch him. However, he'd lost valuable time, battling none other than Lewis Hamilton for position, and then seemed to be significantly impeded by lap 56 battle between the Williams' Alex Albon and AlphaTauri's Pierre Gasly for 13th place. Gasly held up Perez by trying to attack Albon into turns 6 to 7, and then was on the receiving end of some gesticulations from the Red Bull driver as he let Perez by exiting the corner. You're enjoying this video, right? You definitely don't want to miss out on other amazing videos. So all you have to do is just hit the subscription button. It's that easy. Thanks for doing that. Let's move on. Verstappen believes Perez's best chance of taking second place would have been to push harder in his second stint. On the other hand, Red Bull had the belief at the time that the tyres required a more cautious approach. Verstappen said the second stint, because the deck was quite high on the medium, in hindsight, probably as a team we could have pushed a bit more on that middle stint for Checo. But that's always easy to say afterward. At the time, we thought that we had to be a little bit careful on the tyres. We've had a lot of great weekends, but even on great weekends, there are always things you can learn. Perez acknowledged that he should have pushed himself more during his middle stint. He said, "We thought that the degradation was going to be higher than it was, and we just didn't push as much as we should have pushed in that second stint, and probably we left 2 seconds on the table there." At one point in his second stint, Perez said he was losing time because of Verstappen, who was around 2 seconds ahead of him at the time. However, he admitted he was also compromised by pitting 6 laps earlier than Leclerc at the end of his first stint. Perez said, "Today I think Ferrari and Charles did a fantastic race. They have great tyre management and they were stronger than us, especially in that first stint. I died towards the end and that made it a little bit tricky, our strategy. Just that second stint when I was behind Max was on a 1-stop, I was on a 2-stop. And then I ended up not being able to maximize the stint and I couldn't push as much as we should have pushed on that second stint. But at the end of the day, we gave it all. And that's what really matters." But wait, how is it possible for Ferrari, which has had problems with tyre deterioration in the second half of the season, to beat Perez's Red Bull through better tyre usage? Jock Clear, the senior performance engineer for Ferrari, provided a contrasting point of view earlier that morning regarding the Ferrari's tyre deg. Clear argued, "I think that's a myth based around the fact that in the latter part of the season, our drivers have been fighting against a faster car. In the first part of the season, we were as fast, and so there were no apparent differences in tyre deg. In fact, sometimes we were better than them. Against a faster car, you could argue that they should just drive within the tyres, but they are racing drivers and they got used to competing against that car. There's maybe something in Clear's theory. Not that the Red Bull wasn't still faster than the Ferrari here. Verstappen's pole position was a couple of tenths faster than Leclerc's best. But on race day, Verstappen was delicately judging his pace against his tyres and his planned one-stop strategy, doing only what was necessary. The thermal degradation imposed on the tyres by the track just wasn't quite enough to make a 2-stop quicker, especially if you were forced by graining to stop earlier than ideal. That was the near-perfect scenario for Ferrari, especially as it was under no threat this weekend from Mercedes. The Yas Marina track severely punishes any kind of drag penalty, which was unfortunate for Mercedes because the W13 is a relatively draggy car. In contrast to the several previous venues, during the practice sessions, Hamilton and George Russell experimented with rear wings of a smaller size. However, they discovered that the increased oversteer in Sector 3 cost them more time than they gained from the improved straight-line performance in Sectors 1 and 2. As a result, they switched back to the larger wing, which made them faster overall and allowed them to take better care of their tyres. However, this means that they were slower on the straightaways, but they still planned only one pit stop. If the rates of deterioration turned out to be high, there is a chance that they could be in the hunt for the win, since Red Bull and Ferrari would have to make 2 pit stops, while they could get away with just 1. But of course, the degradation wasn't high, and the Mercedes remained out of contention. Helmat Marko believes Lewis Hamilton is somewhat to blame for the Perez failure to finish in second place in the Drivers' Championship. He does not think it has anything to do with Red Bull Racing's strategic choices. Marko does not believe the 2-stopper was detrimental to the Mexican. According to the Red Bull advisor, everything went according to plan. But in order to compete with Hamilton, Perez had to drive much more aggressively than he planned. Marko said, "I think Checo pushed a little too hard, and that's why we had to bring him in earlier than planned. It was only the overtaking maneuver on Hamilton where Perez lost time. Otherwise, it should have been enough." At the same time, Marko confesses that his team was somewhat taken aback by the strategic choices made by Ferrari. He said, "We were surprised that Ferrari could run the one-stop with Leclerc. That was actually not in our planning." Despite this, he believes that his side has more than enough reason to be content with the outcome of Sunday's game and the overall successful season. In the end, Leclerc ended 3 points ahead of Perez in the standings, which indicates that even if Verstappen had not disobeyed team orders in Brazil to let Perez pass, Leclerc would have still prevailed over the Mexican driver by a margin of 1 point, regardless of the outcome of the race. Nevertheless, despite the disappointment in missing out on second place, Perez was optimistic for next season. Perez said, "How we started the first few races as a team with the reliability issues, we have come away and done such a strong job. Red Bull racked up 17 wins out of a possible 22 races. Perez can look back on a wonderful year with Red Bull with a sense of fulfillment, despite finishing in 3rd place overall in the standings." Perez remarked, "We gave it our all, and we are pleased with that. Now, it's time to regroup and come back strong next year." He went on to say, "It's very encouraging, and I really hope that we can keep this momentum going for Red Bull and come back next year even stronger. I believe that the competition will be a lot closer for next year, so I really hope that we can keep this momentum going." What's your thought about the results at Abu Dhabi? Was Verstappen right not to have held off Charles Leclerc for Sergio Perez? Let me know in the comments section below. That will be all for today's video. Thanks for staying tuned. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you can always get to watch more amazing videos like this. See you in the next video.